Hello buddy, welcome back. I decided I wanted to build myself a custom welding helmet. Stick around, I'll show you how I made it. To start this build off, I want to build myself a fiberglass replica of this cowboy hat right here. So I'm going to cover it in the plastic like I did my Angel, as you see right here. Then I'm going to do masking tape over top of that just to add a little more rigidity to it, plus also gives me an extra barrier. Then I'm going to do one, possibly two layers of fiberglass, depending on where I might need the extra fiberglass for reinforcement. The reason for generating a replica of this cowboy hat is because when I go to do the mask portion itself, obviously I got to have a way of anchoring all that to it with fiberglass, plus all the bracketry and everything like that. And obviously you can't do that with a regular soft fabric-based cowboy hat. So that's the reason I got to generate this replica right here. At this stage in the process, I honestly had no clue if it was even going to work, but I figured, what the heck, let's go for it and see what happens. All right, so it's dry to the touch now. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stand off some of the sharper edges so I don't cut myself. I'm going to see if I need to add any more, just to kind of make it a little more rigid in certain areas. And then after that, then I'm going to try to peel it off the hat itself. And then at that point, as long as it does what I want, I'll be able to proceed to the next step. I'm just using one of those 60 grit flapper discs, my angle grinder, to knock down all the sharp points. Those things really make quick work of taking fiberglass down. All right, so after I got done grinding, I did have a couple thin areas, so I went ahead and added a little bit more to it. I've already grinded that down. I just did a quick, perimeter cut. I'll do some more refining on that later, but let's go ahead and see if we can separate them. This is going to be the fun part. Now to start the removal process and see how well this worked. I'm going to start by removing the tape where I kind of wrapped around the edges. Now I had to be extra careful in the brim area because obviously that's the thinnest portion. I wanted to make sure I didn't crack it, but you can see the hat pops right out. Next step is going to remove as much of that masking tape as I can. Then I'm going to go ahead and do a size comparison, figure out exactly where it sits on my head, as far as how far the hat sits on my head and where the skull sits to kind of see through the eye sockets. I'm going to do a quick initial cut just to kind of knock off some of the extra material. But I'm going to have to do a bunch of little feathering cuts, a little here, a little there, until I get it to not only fit on the hat where I want it to, but also fit on my face where I want it to, also allowing for the cage portion that's going to sit on my head. All right, so what I did right here is I just took some masking tape to tape the mask to the hat on the inside so I could do a few test fits to see how I like it before I start doing any fiberglass and making it permanent. All right, so I got the mask attached to the hat now. So what I did on the front here is I added a whole bunch of fiberglass resin right here. I held it upside down like this, just filled that full so this way it would make it nice and solid here. Put some masking tape on the front here so this way I could fill in all those extra holes because I got to make sure I don't get no light through there. So you can see where I got all that filled. And then I put some mesh right here to lock it in. So now the mask and the hat are now one piece. So I'm going to peel that tape off so I can see how all that looks, and then we'll go from there. Now for the part that is probably the least favorite part about doing this, and that's peeling all the masking tape back off of the fiberglass. But as I take it off, I get to see every area that was closed in with the fiberglass and get to start seeing the finished product start taking shape. Okay, so I kind of ran into my first hurdle. This was something I was kind of expecting, but I was kind of hoping to get lucky on this one. And this is for with the helmet, you can lift the helmet up. I went ahead and took this out of the cheaper helmet so I can kind of get some reference ideas of essentially how far down on the head it sits, and then put this on top and see exactly where it falls in relation to the pivot system, which this is where the pivot portion is. How high up and stuff like that's going to be. Well, it practically sits right on top of it like that right there. So pivoting is really not an option with just using this piece right here. So I got a couple different ways I can go about it. One, which I'm definitely not going to do, is cut the helmet, just cut it straight in half like a normal welding helmet. It'll look good from the front, but it won't look good from the side. So I'm definitely not doing that. The other way is to try to do a two-piece system, but it'll never line up properly. It'll never work properly. So I definitely go on that route. The two ideas that I'm thinking about at this moment is, one, just make it fixed where it doesn't even lift up or not like that. It's almost like wearing a hard hat. The other idea is to use this in with a, I'd say maybe like a bracket system that's going to come back here and put my pivot system more back here so I can get a nice pivot. The only problem is I got to find a way to keep it in the upright position because it's no longer going to have like the little rigid piece right here that allows it to, stay put. So at that point, now I got to find a way to keep it up. But if I build something where when I lift it, I turn it to keep it up, I won't be able to do that thing where like I'm ready to weld, and I go like that, and the helmet falls down. I won't be able to do that no more. So it really won't be functional at that point. I'll be able to lift it up, but it won't be functional like it should be. So chances are I'm just going to make it fixed. Unfortunately, I don't really want to go that route, but I think that's going to be the route I'm going to go. So what it is, I went online and I checked, and where I'm going to be putting my glass right here, I can actually find replacement glass pieces for like the smaller glass pieces for welders for the 2x4 1/4 and an auto darkening. So I'm just going to put an auto darkening here so I don't have to worry about it. So now if I'm doing a small project, like a lot of stuff I built on the channel, I'll just put it on, weld, take it off when I'm done. Because obviously the auto darkening will darken when I weld, it'll lighten up when I'm not welding, so I'll still be able to see what I'm doing. Now, if I'm working on like a much larger project where I'm welding all day long, I'll use my regular helmet just because one, it'll be a little bit lighter, two, it'll be much more functional for something like that. But for a lot of stuff like I'm building on the channel, stuff like that, I'll be able to use this for that purpose. So, but for a little bit, I'm gonna kind of exhaust every avenue first before I make that commitment. So I'm just gonna sit here, stare at it, have some smoke come out of my ears, and I'll get back on it and let you know where I go. Right here, I'm building myself some bracketry for some anchoring points for whatever hardware I plan on using. So I'm just going to take this 1/4 inch Lexan right here. I'm going to cut it to fit the back of the skull and go down to the hat. I'm just going to use a little bit of masking tape and some hot glue just to initially hold them in position to make sure I get them straight and get them right where I want them to. And then after that, I'm going to come back and use some fiberglass. Fiberglass those pieces to not only the hat, but obviously the skull itself. So this one, when everything's all done, it's one solid reinforced unit. All right, so you all saw where I was adding these little ears. I ended up going with the fixed version just because I don't really think I'm going to be able to make the tilt portion work as efficiently as I want to. Don't want to spend a whole bunch of time trying to make some big, massive metal rig that's probably not going to work anyway. So I'm going to go with the whole fixed version, which is kind of a bummer because if I'd have known I was going to go this route, I could have just picked myself up one of those hard hats that already looks like a cowboy hat and saved myself a whole bunch of work because this basket thing would have already been, part of it. So it just been a matter of just adding the mask and feathering everything in. But I went this route originally because I was hoping I was going to be able to create the tilt, and obviously I wanted to keep it as lightweight as possible. And this fiberglass right here is going to definitely be much lighter, probably even about half the weight as that hard hat would probably be, because it's a much thicker plastic, and obviously it's designed for a certain industry standard. So, but I mean, it is what it is. But I got that in, so I'm going to go ahead and try it on so we can see how it looks. All right, ready? There we go. Actually fits pretty good. Doesn't bounce, doesn't move. My eyes are perfectly lined up with that. It's not too heavy. So the next step is I'll get that glass piece in place, and then I'll be able to give this a shot. All right, so what I'm working on at the moment is the little, I guess you say the holder for the piece of glass, which you can see I got right here. Now, I still got to find a way to anchor this where it's not going to obstruct me getting the glass in there. I might take some epoxy or something like that. I do have a mark here because it does need to be cut down, but I think I'd rather wait till the actual one gets in to cut that, just to make sure I don't cut it too small. Then the next thing I'm doing is you see where I'm kind of hollowing down the eye sockets. So this will sit down inside here like that. So when you look at it from the front side, I just put some masking tape on it real fast. So this way, when on the front, you'll see it still has the shape I want. Now, the only thing I got to double check on, which I'll have to do some testing before I actually officially glue this in, is how the auto dark is going to react to the shaded areas. What I might end up having to do is I might end up having to put, even though I don't want to, probably like a small elongated notch across here, just enough to allow the light to get in to trigger the auto darkening. But I'm going to do some testing before I officially glue this in, just to make sure. So right now I'm kind of at a stopping point until that comes in, but essentially this is where I'm at with it. All right, so while I'm waiting for that glass piece to show up, I'm just one of those people that I don't like to be defeated. So I'm going to continue to tinker with this until I kind of get what I want, I guess you can say. So I kind of have this little rig right now that I'm kind of working on to kind of create the tilt. And it's surprisingly, it's actually working pretty good. The only downside is obviously with it being kind of heavy, it'll stay up if I'm looking upward, but as soon as I put my head down, it'll kind of fall down a little bit. Let me kind of show you real quick. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pop it on real fast. You see it still fits really nice. I still, my eyes are still lined up with the sockets, but I can lift it up. And like I said, it'll stay up like this, but as soon as I go to lean my head down a little bit, you see it'll fall down just because it's so heavy. And if I tighten the bolts up enough to where like I can get it to kind of be a little bit more better than that, then as I go to lift it up, it kind of feels like this right here, like I'm pulling up on my forehead. So it's kind of, I'm gonna have to take the good with the bad. But at least if I'm talking to the camera, I can lift it up, talk, and then when I'm welding, I can go down. And if I'm welding and say I got to stop for a second, I can always go like this, reposition, drop it down, and do that. And this is going to still be an auto dark anyways, so I don't necessarily have to lift it up and down between each tack. But if I needed to for some reason, I can do that. So, but overall, I'm actually kind of happy with the way it's turning out so far. Like I said, I don't like things to defeat me, so I'm going to continue to tinker till I get it. I got a couple more little feathering to do on it, but so far, I think I'm well on my way to getting this to work. All right, so my little piece showed up. I said this is an auto darkening. So like you see, like right now, you can see right through it, no problem. But if I flash some light on it, it'll darken right up. I also cut myself a little piece of glass here for the front of it to help keep the sparks from doing any damage to it. And this is going to be the cup that's going to hold it. And what I did is I cut a little piece of Lexan that's a fraction bigger than that. So this way I can force it in there, make it nice and square. So when I fiberglass this in, it'll stay perfectly like it needs to. And then once it's dry, I'll be able to pop that out. Those go right in. These little ears right here left, I'll just fold those over, and that's what's going to hold that in. And then I'll be able to start putting the rest of the stuff on, and we'll see if it works good. Once I know it works, then we'll go ahead and paint it. All right, so I got the piece all fiberglassed in. I ended up having to make a little notch in the front there. I really didn't want to, but unfortunately I had to because the thing on these is so sensitive for the light that blocking off some of it, you see, if I could get it just right, you'll see it starts twitching, see? Because it's having trouble registering the amount of light that's coming in. So I had to make a little small notch in there so I can get a little more light to come through. Now it seems to be working just fine. So I'm going to do a little test run, show you. Okay, so I'm not ready to anchor it in 100% just yet. So I just have it taped in there. But you can see I got my piece right here. So once I arc it, see it'll darken right up. Once I stop, it'll lighten back up for me. And I know it's a little out of focus, but so the next step is to work on fixing any of the extra imperfections and getting it painted and turning it into a functioning mask. All right, so I went ahead and just put some black, just some sandable primer on there to look for areas that need some attention, like say like right here where I got like now none of this is like paint runs. These are all like where fiberglass, kind of ran and stuff like that when I had it like pitched on its sides and stuff like that. Stuff like this right here, stuff that was hard to see when it was all one color. So with that being on there, and I can get in here and kind of sand a lot of those things off. You see I kind of picked apart a couple pieces that were here. So I got some areas to do some attention to, probably a little bit of filler work to smooth a few things out. Then I'll probably put another little coat of black primer on there. Now I don't plan on fixing every little imperfection just because it's going to be, like stuff like this. I kind of want a little bit in there, so it looks like it's old and stuff. But I definitely don't want like that on there. You know what I mean? So let me go ahead and start working on that. All right, so I got it all sanded down. I did a little bit of body filler in a few areas. I'm not trying to make it perfect because I don't want it to be perfect. I want it to look old and kind of weathered. But I did want to get rid of some of the excessive looking areas. I also wanted to make sure like these areas right here were a nice smooth transition from my little side piece I put on there to the skull itself. Now the skull had a bit of a texture to begin with, so I try not to sand too much of that off in the front. The side I got a little bit, but that's not going to be too big of a deal. I also want the hat to have a little bit of a textured look. Now, I couldn't find this in black. I could only find it in a dark brown, but kind of like a textured kind of look. So I'm going to start with that brown, and then I'm going to do some black over top of that to kind of give it like a little bit of like a weathered, kind of look. And then after that, I'm going to use this for the skull, and then I'll weather the skull after the fact. So let's go ahead and get a little bit more primer back on it and start painting it. All right, so essentially I got the texture spray on there because like I said, I'm kind of more or less going for a black look. I end up taping the skull off because I don't want any of that texture spray to get on the skull, so that's all taped off. So the next step is going to be to paint the black on there, but I might actually leave it to where maybe a little bit of brown pokes through to mimic maybe dirt, wear spots, or something of that nature. But next step is let's go ahead and get some black on there. Now, right here, I got a little ahead of myself because I started blacking out around the teeth and all that stuff to make it look good. But then I realized that after I did the aging, I was going to have to lighten the teeth back up. So I ended up having to go back over the teeth and redo it again. All right, so I finished up the last bit of painting. Overall, I think it actually came out pretty good. The one thing I do like is the textured paint that I put on the hat. I'm sure you really can't see it in the camera, but it really gave this hat like a really like a realistic look to it. It doesn't look, it's not all smooth and matte finish or anything like that. It looks weathered. It looks old. It actually, to me, looks like a real cowboy hat sitting on here. So I'm really happy with that. As far as the skull, I did the same thing that most people do when they do a skull. You paint it a lighter color, do some wood stain, age it a little bit, blacked everything out, and kind of highlighted the teeth a little bit to kind of make those stand out. One drawback is obviously the piece right here. As the light hits it, I don't know if I'm getting it to do it or not, but it'll reflect. So it kind of takes away from the eye sockets being fully blacked out, but you can't win them all. You know what I mean? So, but overall, I like the way it fits. It fits really nice. It doesn't rattle, doesn't move, it stays put. Obviously, it is a little bit heavier than a regular welding mask, but it's not so heavy that I couldn't use it for a project. Would I use it for a long duration project? Probably not. But like little small projects, absolutely, I'd like to use it. What kind of sparked this particular build was I've had a couple of those welding masks in the past that actually had like the skull face in the front of them, but they're okay. But to me, they were never really cool looking because you had that big flat piece in the front, whether it be the small glass one or the new bigger ones that they have now. It just takes away from it because you have this big flat thing in the middle and then some teeth, and to me, it just doesn't look cool in my opinion. I mean, they're okay, but they just don't look cool. So I wanted something that actually looked really cool, actually looked like a skull and stuff like that. And that's what kind of drove this particular project. I wanted to build something very unique, I guess you can say. But I've been thinking about this for a long time because I wasn't sure exactly what direction I want to go with it. Well, I happened to be watching the first Ghost Rider movie, and at the end, the Sam Elliott character where he's the cowboy version. Well, when he put his hat on, obviously I don't have the flames or nothing like that. But when he put the hat on, it just had a really cool look to it. It had like a very sinister kind of look and stuff like that. And I was like, that would actually be a cool looking design to do. So that's essentially what inspired this particular build as far as having a cowboy hat and stuff like that on it. Otherwise, it would have just been the skull face and stuff like that, which would have been a heck of a lot easier. But it wouldn't have been as cool, in my opinion. But overall, like I said, I'm pretty happy with this project. I think overall, as far as what I was going for, trying to make something very unique, I hope I hit that mark, or at least I think I hit that mark. You have to let me know in the comments. But I hope you all enjoyed this video, and we'll see you on the next one.